I'm back for another Mark 4.5 Hot Takes episode. Today, I'm going to be looking at the Orgoth Sea Raiders. My name is Ryan. I used to be good at Warmachine. Welcome to Spell Rack. To start reviewing Sea Raiders changes, I actually want to start with Old Umbri, and let's look at Bodan, because there's a key ability that lots of Orgoth are going to gain, and it has the verbiage for it here. What I want to look at is Last Word, which is on his feet. So Last Word says, when a model with Last Word is disabled by an enemy attack, it can immediately advance up to 3 inches and make one basic melee attack. I think the key word here is disabled, right? It's disabled box destroyed. So this happens early in the chain where a model is killed. It gets to move 3 inches and make a basic melee attack. I feel like this is kind of now a little bit of a sub theme inside of Sea Raiders. And I'm really excited to see an effect like this, kind of not army-wide, but given to a number of units. I think it'll make Orgoth a little bit more interesting to play and play against. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and get into the actual changes. Starting in the change order, the Graveborn Cadre. These are the new units that came out in the Frozen and Forgotten box. The Execrators on here go from Rat 7 to Rat 6. Absolutely incredible unit. Losing one rat, no big deal at all. The ghoul and the champion going down a mat, not a big deal. I mean, very much just in line with normal changes. The Execrators are going to be absolutely fantastic. You're going to see them all over the place next year. Assault Reavers. This is the first unit that gains Last Word. So let's go ahead and look at the Assault Reavers real quick, and then let's keep that Last Word part in mind. So Assault Reavers, they lose prey, and their harpoon goes from POW 12 to 13, and then the spear on the melee goes from POW 10 to 12. So you're losing prey, but you're gaining a POW on the ranged weapon, you're gaining 2 POW on the melee weapon, and then that Last Word is going to allow them to, again, move 3 inches and make a melee attack. Their mat and rat is not changed. Their mat is important because they are going to have a POW 12 attack. At mat 6, their rat is a little less important because they have CRA. So when you are making range attacks with these guys, and keep in mind they're only range 8, so they are going to be close to a charge if they go out and put out gun attacks. But then when these models die on disabled, they get to move and make a mat 6 POW 12 attack, which can be really effective if it's infantry coming into them. The second model to look at is Azdarak. He loses sprint and gains reposition 5. And then on Fuel the Flames, it's an additional dice on the damage roll. Azdarak is still not one I'm really sure about. He's 21 points. It's an awful lot to pay. I kind of feel like he should be maybe more like 19 points. We'll see how he plays out over the year, but I'm not really sure. The Garlgast is another big one. The Garlgast is one that was a favorite of Horus, and getting that +3 armor buff was a really big deal for him. With Horus getting knocked down a little bit, changes that we'll see, the Garlgast needed to be a little bit better into the meta just in general to be able to be played with all the casters. I guess really good time to say, I think a theme for Sea Raiders here also is, I think what a lot of factions got is, the army is significantly more playable overall. I think all the Warcasters have a place in the meta, and a lot more of the units got to be playable. So if you're a Sea Raiders player, you went from one caster and kind of a little bit more specific army to a whole lot more being available. So the Garlgast gets a buff, being able to gain aggressive, being able to gain Pain Maddened automatically is pretty good. And then a little bit of updates on the weapons. I think you'll see a little bit more of the Garlgast. The other thing with the Garlgast was the price, and I think the price point on the Garlgast kind of tends to stay the same despite these buffs. I think you're probably going to take the Frotherhead no matter what, your POW 23, and then with that, you're probably going to take the cheaper options on the other items. You're probably still taking the Infernus Cannons, and then you're probably still taking the Rending Claws. They're POW 19 instead of POW 20 here, but you're going to be buying POW 23 attacks. And so really look for the Garlgast to still generally be a 26-point Colossal. So it's a really cheap point to be able to put one in. 818 is not great, but it's got 72 boxes. And then there's plenty of things to do with it inside the faction. The Nashers losing a mat is fine. There's still POW 13 Weapon Masters. Those guys hurt. The Groton Champion gains Sidestep and Thresher, a little bit more utility on him. The Keeper was the one with the Shield Guard, just loses a mat, not a big deal. Hexless going from mat 8 to 7 is fine. The defense loss is kind of a bummer. Defense 15 was a really nice stat. but you go down to 14, which is still high, armor 16, and then gain spirit driven. Horus obviously was the face of the faction, and he gets changed. He loses Fate Blast, so you can't reroll dice anymore, but he gains Carnage and Windstorm, which are absolutely fantastic spells. And then obviously Windstorm globally changed to only a 3-inch bubble, not an 8-inch bubble anymore. So a debuff to Windstorm, but still a very powerful spell. And then the change to the feat is +2 armor from +3 armor. I think Horus is still a very solid caster. +2 armor across the army, especially on a Garlgast, still very good. Having Carnage, Windstorm, he's still solid. The Jackal, the light, gains 1 head option going from 1 to 2. I think the Jackal is one of the better warjacks in the game. So losing the Bloodthird Hest from 1 to 2, not a huge deal. Your Arc Note is unchanged, your Berserk Head is unchanged, and those are some that you're going to be taking off in anyway. Kishtaar is another interesting one. Kishtaar was, I think, kind of a caster a lot of people liked the idea of last year, but wasn't quite there. So the control range goes from 12 to 14, which is pretty fantastic. Field Marshal Swift Hunter is lost on Kishtaar with that larger control range, gains Resourceful, Second Sight, and Silence of Death. Gaining Silence to Death is a big, big deal. Silence to Death was a very powerful spell, and a lot of armies had to play around it last year. I think having Silence to Death limited in the meta is going to let a lot of lists flourish, but having something like Kishtaar in your pairing is going to put Silence to Death back on the table and keep a caster like Wolf at bay. The new ability, Hell Hunter, is an interesting one. Basically says when Kishtaar destroys a model with one of her range attacks, a model in her cohort can move 3 inches. What is interesting is that it doesn't say a model can only be affected by this ability once per turn. I expect, because Kishtaar is Rate of Fire 2, I expect this to be a once per turn move. I don't expect you to be able to move one of your Warjacks or Monstrosities 6 inches. I expect you to be able to move 2 of them 3 inches. So we'll see if that actually gets changed. If it doesn't get changed, being able to move 6 inches is a very, very powerful effect. And then there's the feat Pandemonium. Effectively gives you Science Importance inside of your new 14-inch control area. On models, attack and damage rolls, you get an extra dice, you drop the lowest. Importantly, it lasts for 1 round. So if you run Kishtaar with a lot of models with last word, you're getting those last word attacks with that extra dice reroll. I've mentioned before that dice math is approximately a +2/+2 buff. So if we go back up to our first Assault Reavers unit where they were MAT 6, POW 12, it's kind of like them being MAT 8, POW 14. So very effective if you're going to take Kishtaar with a couple of heavies, getting those 3-inch additional movements. You have Silence of Death, and then you could have a lot of last word models that are still affected by your feat. So you could really jam somebody and then kill a lot of models with the feat. Moloch is another one of the character heavies that went up in points, although did receive a little bit of a buff and going from defense 11 to 12. Matt comes down from 8 to 7 as to be expected. Gains Soul Tap. Honestly, don't know what that one does. Looking forward to seeing that when the app comes out. And then Moloch has the ability to increase his defense by spending Spell tokens. He goes up just 1 defense, whereas it used to be 2. And so your base defense 12, and you can go up to 13 a lot easier. Oriax is another very interesting caster that was not great last year. Oriax gains Fate Bless, so now there's that ability to re-roll more often. Gains Darkfire and Censure. Oriax's feat is going to change where you used to be able to only use abilities once per turn. You can now use abilities multiple times. So that means the Gate of Worlds you can do, it's like a TK. So you could spend 4 souls to TK 4 different models. And so that is a much more powerful effect. Being able to get a +2 ability across a lot of your units or some of your heavies. The other item with Oriax that is significant is Starcrossed. Starcrossed is a reverse Signs Importance for attack rolls. Says your opponent gets to roll an additional dice, but then has to drop the highest. Again, you can kind of think of this as a +2 defense buff or a -2 to attack rolls for your opponent. With attack rolls coming down in this edition, Orgoth Sea Raiders have the ability to spam some amount of, say, defense 13 models and then put Starcrossed over top of them, which is going to make a lot of them look like defense 15. Oriax is actually one of the rare options in this game to run a defense skew. And I think Oriax could be quite powerful if played properly with Starcrossed. He's going to need to be up the table protecting his models. He's going to be weak to range attacks, but in a melee versus melee game, Starcross can be very, very powerful. It should be noted also, Starcross doesn't just affect melee attacks. It's just going to be hard to get his Starcross bubble to reach out to some guns, but sometimes you are going to catch guns and they're still going to get -2. Orsus Butcher is one that I think most people are very excited for in Sea Raiders with the change. Orsus, beloved Butcher, been around forever in this game, absolute beefcake. He gains Redline and Revive. Redline, very important for the +2 speed, +2 damage, and then the free charges. Having him gain Revive is a little bit of a utility spell. We'll see how helpful it is on his card. He gains Reposition 2, which makes sense. He is on a horse. I'm not sure why he didn't have it before. He loses crit decap, gains blood boon. So when you kill something, you can cast a spell. And then the biggest item on Orsus is the change to his feat. So his feat still has the can't tough, can't heal portion of it, but the return models to play D3+2 is replaced with D3+2 friendly faction models add an additional dice on their melee damage rolls. So effectively, you get to give D3+2 friendly faction models Weapon Master. It doesn't say warrior models. So keep in mind, you can put this on your lights or your heavies or your gargantuans, or even some of your super solos, your units, whatever. A very powerful feat, really cranks up the damage. Having Redline, huge spell, and he still has Hunter's Mark. So he can give basically the entire army against the Hunter's Mark target, +2 charge. And then you also get +2 speed on Redline. So you can send a heavy +4 inches, which is pretty solid. The Ravener, great heavy, goes from mat 7 to mat 6. Again, makes sense. Reaver Commander, one of the best utility pieces in the game, gains last word. Reaver Commander is just casually a POW 12 Weapon Master. Now he goes down to mat 6, but still a mat 6 POW 12 Weapon Master with a free attack. Pretty cool. Reaver Skirmishers, again, gain last word. These guys are a pretty significant, just generally good unit at 13-14. Having that 13 defense option on a 6-point kind of unit that just wants to maybe jam a little bit is really great. Also, they have Prowl, Overtake, 2 weapons, mat 6, really good unit. And then with last word, you get them in there and you get to make mat 6 POW 12 blessed attacks. Reaver Standard gets the same treatment as a lot of these standards. It loses a point. It goes from 2 points to 1, gains inspiration and last word. The Harriers lose gang, but gain 2 POW and go from cost 10 to 9. The Harriers are defense 13. So again, kind of in a lower rat meta, they'll look a little bit better. If you're going to put them under Starcrossed, that adds even more value to them. Them coming up down a point is pretty solid. Next up is Sabreth. Sabreth is an absolute monster, always has been a monster. I'm surprised he wasn't seen more last year, but he just gets better this edition. I expect him to be one of the premier Warcasters in the game. His control area goes from 12 to 14. It is a buff, but it's not a huge deal on him. He gains Ghost Walk, obviously a very powerful spell. Hex Blast can knock off upkeeps. Invaluable Resolve. Now you can put spells out for +2 armor. And then the feat change, really the feat stays the same. He can cast all of his spells once, of which his spell list is insane. And now in his control range, faction warrior models get +2 speed on the charge. So you're going to get +2 speed on the charge. And then he gains 4 spells. He already has 3. So he's going to have 7 spells on his card. And he gets to cast each spell for free on his feat turn. Keep in mind he has Perdition. Perdition says if an enemy model is damaged by Perdition, so you could just hit a warrior model, one of your cohort models can move 5 inches. So if you have a speed 6 Ravener with a 2-inch threat, so he threats 11 inches, now it threats 16. That's really far. Perdition is once per piece, but you can cast Perdition multiple times. If you have multiple heavies, you can have each of them move 5 inches. Very powerful spell. He also has Fog of War. So those skirmishers I just mentioned with Prowl, they're going to gain stealth. They're going to be up there with their last word abilities. And he has Crippling Grasp, one of the best debuffs in the game. -2 speed, defense, and armor, and melee attack damage rolls. Absolutely crippling. So I think Sabreth is going to be really, really good. He has an incredible spell list, possibly just the best spell list in the game. He's out there at control 14 now, so that's going to help the fog of war a little bit. I think he's bananas. I think he's nuts. I think Sabreth is going to be a lot of fun to play and really tough to play against. Siege Tarask is another piece that gets updated a little bit. Mat goes down and gains hyper aggressive as a base rule. So that is good. You don't have to spend rage tokens for it. Strike Reavers, again, this is another unit gaining last word. Strike Reavers are your sort of hand cannon CRA unit, range 12, POW 12, so they can put out some pretty good output. They also have a good defensive stat line. They're a 13-15 with shield wall, so they're a 13-17 base to base. However, in the update, they did gain an armor. So they're going to be armor 16, shield wall up to armor 18, and then their cost goes down from 8 to 7, and they're gaining last word. So this unit gets a ton better. Range 12, POW 12, Rat 6 with CRA is very good stat line. Being able to be defense 13 is fantastic, and then armor 16 up to 18 is absolutely going to be incredible. 13 makes you hard to hit, and 18 basically makes you immune to blast damage, and you're going to live through a lot of even POW 10 and some POW 12 attacks. So a really durable unit with really good range output. And last word. I want to go over the Tyrant next. Tyrant just generally gets cheaper. Each of the head options came down by 1 to 2 points, making the chassis just cheaper overall. He does go also from defense 11 to 12, which is a big deal. And then some of the weapons come down and get a little bit cheaper, or an item like the Shredder, which is a very powerful gun, gains a POW 16 melee attack with it, which just makes for a more versatile heavy. I think you're going to see definitely more Tyrants on the table. They were very expensive before, and they've gotten a little bit cheaper, so I think they're just going to be a little bit better. Axer's great unit, loses a mat. Barrager's still a very powerful ranged unit. Them losing a mat is not a big change at all. Forge Master's just a utility beast. And then the War Witch coming down in a mat is not a big deal. They're just utility pieces. So I think Orgoth overall, I think you just have a suite of Warcasters that are very dynamic and all very playable. Horus was the man last year and is still very powerful now with a good supportive spell list and a good feat because 2 armor is still pretty solid. Kishtaar is going to be a very interesting, unique piece with that feat, combining with last word, being able to double dip because you're going to get the signs of importance on your turn. You're going to get it on your opponent's turn. Oriax is a big question mark for me. I think he has tremendous potential with Starcrossed and a pseudo defense skew. It's going to be tough to handle for a lot of lists. If you can put him in the right places and you can learn to really play him and not get him killed, he can be very, very powerful. I think the Butcher is going to be awesome. I think a ton of people are going to be playtesting the Butcher. So keep an eye out for a lot of him out there. He gets a really good stat line. He gets a much better feat. Being able to put weapon masters and stuff, he's going to destroy armor. And then he's still the Butcher, right? He's still going to get in there, kill stuff, get blood quench tokens. And if he gets to do that, he's going to be unstoppable and a real big problem. And then Sabreth, honestly, Sabreth has my nod currently for one of the best casters in the game. I think Sabreth is currently the premier caster in Sea Raiders and just going to be tremendous overall. He's got a incredible spell list and a feat that got better. He was already good. He was just overshadowed by Horusk. Now, really, I think Sabreth is dialed up to 11, and he's going to be, I would say, list 1 for Sea Raiders. So definitely something to keep an eye out on, whether you're playing them or playing against them. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Those are my quick takes for Orgoth, Sea Raiders. Talk to you next time.